health impacts of the pandemic, but also the economic impacts, and as we focus on longer-term regional recovery. We are now approaching 12 months since the COVID-19 pandemic started, and the crisis has changed the world in many ways, especially the way we live. We need to continue to respond with flexibility and adaptability to our work in both the short and long term. As we continue to adapt, Australia is committed to supporting our partners in the ASEAN region in cross-border collaboration in investigating and prosecuting trafficking in persons cases and protecting trafficking victims. I hope you will indulge me just very briefly as I tell you about Australia's commitment to ASEAN, which has been demonstrated at the very highest level just 2 weeks ago. Australia's Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, participated in a series of ASEAN-led meetings, including the ASEAN Australia Summit, the East Asia Summit, and the RCEP Summit. At these meetings, Prime Minister Scott Morrison made Australia's commitment to recovery, resilience, and security very clear. Australia is investing in partnerships in Southeast Asia, and the region's priorities are our own priorities. We have a shared stake in each other's recovery from COVID-19, and we will be with ASEAN every step of the way. The PM also announced a landmark suite of new initiatives for ASEAN and the region. Today's webinar is an extremely timely, given the pandemic has put trafficking victims in more vulnerable and precarious positions. We know that COVID-19 and the measures put in place to confront the global pandemic are exacerbating existing vulnerabilities and creating new ones. We continue to build on the success of counter-trafficking initiatives in the ASEAN region, which we know have resulted in positive outcomes in promoting and protecting the rights of trafficking victims in justice processes. We are very fortunate to have an expert panel today to share with us the challenges and responses from the perspective of an origin and host country. We have with us distinguished law enforcement officers from Myanmar, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. We look forward to hearing more about the lessons learned with respect to transnational investigations and how we can strengthen the criminal justice response to trafficking in persons cases, especially in light of the challenges posed by the pandemic. With the knowledge sharing in this event, ASEAN sectoral bodies and member states will be better informed on policy formulation and direction on victim protection during and after this pandemic. We very much value the presence of the distinguished speakers today and ASEAN ACT for organising this event. And we appreciate the participation of key state and non-state partners from the ASEAN region. ASEAN member states and ASEAN sectoral bodies continue to demonstrate commitment and leadership in their adaptive responses to counter-trafficking during the crisis. Our support to build on your successes will continue. Thank you again for your untiring commitment and dedication to counter-trafficking, and I wish you a productive discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jillian, for encouraging continuing support. As always, and set the tone for today's knowledge share. And for posterity purposes, seconds and capture this moment in a book. Can I request everyone to put their, please?
Thank you, Darlene. I think we hear the voice of our Myanmar interpreter in the main floor. Our Myanmar interpreter, you can go to your channel. Okay, everyone, this will be quick. The usual screen capture. Kindly look at your cameras and give us a good smile. In 1, 2, and 3. Another one, please. Kindly switch on your cameras to our speakers. Please switch on your cameras and
You cannot
smile. In
you
one,
cannot
two,
start your
and
video because the host has
there
stopped
you
it.
go. Okay, back to you, Darlene.
Okay, thank you very much, Cam, for
Hi,
that.
Dr. Kyle.
Okay, just a brief run through of the objectives today, and also which was emphasized by Councillor Jillian.
Okay, she can start the video again, Dr. Cal, and then we can have another video with her.
Cam, are
okay,
we okay?
There she is. Okay, there is our speaker. Okay, let's have another photo.
Okay,
I'm gonna add her to the screen and spotlight. Okay, there you go. All our speakers complete. Thank you so much. And 1, 2, and there you go. Another photo, please. 1, 2, and there you go. All right, thank you so much. Dr. Kia, we can hear you speaking on in the English channel. I think you have to go to the Myanmar channel for your translation and interpretation. Thank you. And over to you, Darlene.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So our distinguished speakers today will discuss the lessons learned in the bilateral transnational investigative cooperation.
Hi, Darlene. Maybe you can try your microphone again.
How's this, Cam? Is this better? All right. Okay. So as I've mentioned, the speakers today will discuss the lessons learned in the bilateral transnational investigative cooperation between Philippines and Malaysia and between Thailand and Myanmar, specifically on sharing information, investigating and prosecuting tip cases, and protecting victims in the process. So we hope that at the end of this webinar, ASEAN policymakers, partners, and attendees would gain some guidance on cross-border cooperation to counter trafficking and be able to build on the successes and continue the transnational cooperation between and among the ASEAN member states in investigating and prosecuting human trafficking cases while ensuring that the victims are protected all throughout the process. So having said that, you would probably understand why my anticipation leading up to this day has been building up, as I am very excited to hear from each of our distinguished decorated police officers who I can say that they are all committed, passionate, and dedicated in their law enforcement work to combat trafficking in persons. So allow me to first introduce all our speakers. We have two sets. The first set will be from Malaysia and Philippines, and the second set of speakers will be from Thailand and Myanmar. So for our first set, we have Police Colonel Maria Sheila Portento, who will be discussing the transnational investigative cooperation work from the perspective of the Philippines. And then we have ACP Azry Akmar bin Dato Haji Ayob, who will be discussing from the perspective of Malaysia. So Police Colonel Maria Sheila Portento is the Chief of the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Division of the Philippine National Police Women and Children Protection Center. Last year, the King and Queen of Sweden invited Police Colonel Portento at the Royal Palace in Stockholm for a roundtable discussion on how to use artificial intelligence as a catalyst for child safety online. She completed her master's in public management in the Development Academy of the Philippines in 2017 and master's in public administration at the National College of Business and Arts in 2005. She attended several relevant courses such as the Asia Region Law Enforcement Management Program, or ARLEM, in Vietnam, Police Masterclass in Netherlands, FBI Pacific Training Initiative in Bangkok, Thailand, and the Specialist Anti-Trafficking Unit Commander's Course also in Thailand last February 2020. She is currently the chairperson of OCG in PICAC and the focal person of the Philippines for the ASEAN Senior Officers Meeting, Officials Meeting on Transnational Crime for Trafficking in Persons. She was also awarded the second Best Senior Police Commissioned Officer of 2019 during the Police Service Anniversary. For Assistant Commissioner of Police Azry Akmar bin Dato Haji Ayob, he has served in the Royal Malaysian Police since 2001 and is currently the Assistant Director of ATIPSOM Division Criminal Investigation Department of the Royal Malaysia Police. He holds a degree in Business Studies from Waikato University, New Zealand, and obtained his Master's of Business Management in University Utara in Malaysia. In the past 19 years period, he had gained invaluable and vast experience, including opportunities to participate in police strategic planning on investigation for several key cases. Based on his excellent academic background, experience, and achievements, and highly recommended positive integrity, he was selected to lead the ATIPSOM division, which focused to prevent, suppress, punish trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants in Malaysia. So for our second set of speakers, we have Police Lieutenant Colonel Kin So from Myanmar and Police Colonel Khemmarin Hassiri from Thailand. So they will be discussing similar bilateral transnational investigative cooperation. For Colonel So, she will present it from the perspective of Myanmar, and for Colonel Hassiri from the perspective of Thailand. So Police Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Kin So is the commander of Sub Anti-Trafficking in Persons Division, number 2 of the Myanmar Police Force. From 2016 to 2019, she worked as a team leader of the Child Protection Unit in Yangon. Since 2009, she worked at the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Division as team leader, and simultaneously, she was also the team leader of Ayaya Wadi Region Division Anti-Trafficking Task Force number 7 from 2009 up to 2016. And last but not the least, our speaker, Police Colonel Khemmarin Hassiri, is the Deputy Commander of General Staff Division, Police Region 8 of the Royal Thai Police in Thailand from since April 2019. Deputy Commander, he was also the Deputy Commander of the Foreign Affairs Division of the Royal Thai Police from 2013 to 2019. And since 2004 to 2013, he has served as a superintendent in different stations, units, and locations in Thailand, widening his law enforcement experience and perspective on foreign and civil affairs, disaster victim identification, police forensic science, and police education. He earned his bachelor's degree on public administration. He has several extensive international trainings, and to mention a few, he also attended the RLM, like Police Colonel Portento in Vietnam. In 2009, workshop of transnational crime investigation in Taipei, Taiwan, tackling transnational crime in UK, a comprehensive security response to terrorism in Honolulu, USA, and in the prestigious FBI National Academy Session 182 in Quantico, Virginia, USA. He also served as a police attaché attached to the Royal Thai Embassy in Yangon, Myanmar, from October 2014 to September 2018, working closely with the Myanmar Police Force on trafficking in persons issues. So I will just jump right into the conversation with Police Colonel Portento and ACP Azry Akmar, with Police Colonel Portento to speak first about the perspective of the Philippines. Okay, may I give the floor now to Police Colonel Portento. Please, the floor is yours. Let me share the slides for you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for the given opportunity to be able to share with you and highlight some of the accomplishments achieved by both the Philippine National Police and the Royal Malaysia Police as a result of our bilateral cooperation. Next, please. Due to its proximity and accessibility, Malaysia has been a destination country for Filipinos seeking employment overseas. hence is not spared on the prevalence of undocumented Filipinos as well as trafficking victims. With the initiative of the ASEAN Australia Counter-Trafficking or the ASEAN Act, formerly the Australia-Asia Program to Combat Trafficking in Persons or the APTIP, the bilateral meetings with Royal Malaysia Police and its government was initiated. A total of 9 face-to-face bilateral meetings were already concluded and 1 virtual meeting due to the pandemic. Amongst the notable outcomes of these meetings is the establishment of point of contact in each country, information and referral mechanism for shared investigation of cases, which resulted to the rescue of Filipino women victims of trafficking in persons and arrest of suspects in Malaysia. These successful operations were conducted jointly by the PNP and the RMP. Next, please. For our gains, to expedite processing of case referrals, both the PNP and the RMP came up with a template on information sharing, which provides a comprehensive report on the case being referred and indicates the level of priority. Next, please. On rescue operations, at around 6:00 p.m. of August 15, 2018, the PNP Women and Children Protection Center received a report through the Interpol National Central Bureau Manila, as referred by the Philippine Embassy in Singapore, that 3 Filipinas sought refuge thereat. After an interview with these Filipinas, at about 7 p.m. of same day, PNP-WCPC, through the WhatsApp platform, informed the RMP of the said case. Immediately, the RMP conducted a validation of the report, which resulted to the rescue of 27 Filipinas in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. Through further assistance of the RMP, a team from PNP-WCPC were able to conduct an interview with victims who were placed under a shelter via an interim protection order. As a result, trafficking cases were filed against identified Bureau of Immigration officers here in Manila and private individuals identified as facilitators. Next, please. For our challenges, we see victim identification as a challenge due to the differences in the legislations and policies of both countries. But this does not hamper the RMP from assisting WCPC in its requests for conduct of rescue operations. In the Philippines, whether a person consented to the exploitation or not, he or she will be identified as a victim, while laws in Malaysia provide that exploitation needs to be established before one can be identified as a trafficking victim. And then we have the uncooperative victims. We have been instrumental in some rescues of Filipinas trafficked victims in Malaysia with the assistance and facilitation of our RMP counterparts. In most cases, these victims, when repatriated back to our country, would manifest disinterest in filing cases. This not only fails to give them justice, but opens more opportunity for the trafficker to continue their illegal activities. Next, please. For our lessons learned, with this partnership, hereunder are the lessons learned. 1, immediate response of RMP to tip referral is indeed really commendable. Next, monitoring of cases through agreed virtual meeting of focal points. From time to time, informal meetings are arranged to discuss urgent matters when needed. Next, timely information sharing. Positive results are products of timely information sharing. Then we have sharing of best practices and strengthened police-to-police cooperation. Next, please. Our ways forward. With the commitment fostered by both the PNP and the RMP, we shall continue to sustain our bilateral cooperation and provide support whenever necessary. Then, with the support of the ASEAN Australia Counter-Trafficking, we both agreed to have joint capacity building on trafficking in persons for us to have a deep understanding of each other's protocol in handling tip victims, conduct of investigation and operation, among others. Then, institutionalization of shared practices, and lastly, expansion of bilateral cooperation with other ASEAN law enforcement agencies. Next, please. That would be all. Thank you and good day.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sheila, for a very comprehensive presentation from the perspective of the Philippines. So even given with the challenges, a lot has been done from the side of the Philippines. So let us also hear from the perspective of the Malaysia. All right. Let me call on Assistant Commissioner of Police, Azry, to take the floor. I will be sharing the slides for you.
Thank you, Darlene. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, as for the Malaysian perspective, next slide, please. Okay, Malaysia has actively involved in several activities program supported by the ASEAN Australian Counter-Trafficking ASEAN Act in cooperation by organizing a bilateral meeting with foreign countries such as the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and also Vietnam to combat the human trafficking activities in the region. The bilateral meeting was discussed about human trafficking cases in both countries and resolve the pending human trafficking cases related victims protection, jurisdiction, perspectives, and transnational investigative cooperation between the countries. And from 2015 until to date, the Royal Malaysian Police and the Philippine National Police has conducted about 10 bilateral meetings between both countries, 3 meetings with the Indonesian National Police, 2 meetings with Royal Thai Police, and 4 with the People's Republic of Security of Vietnam. On the 10 bilateral meeting between the Royal Malaysian Police and the PNP, next slide, please. On the 10 bilateral meeting between the RMP and the PNP, being the first in Penang, which was held on May 2015, and being the latest one using virtual WebEx on the July 2020. And the objective of the meetings to discuss regarding investigation cooperation between RMP and PNP on combating human trafficking cases. And the discussion in bilateral meetings such as the emerging trends, updates, and important update on existing cases and the continuation of the cases, sharing of information on new cases, capturing outcomes and results, and also the way forwards between the both countries. Next. The positive outcome that we can see here is that on August 2018, the RMP has received an information from the WCPC PNP regarding an information on human trafficking activities involving Filipinos national for the purpose of sexual exploitation. And acting on that information, a team from ATIPSOM or D3 has conducted a raid in Johor Bahru. And what is interesting on this raid is that we have managed to call upon WCPC, which happens to be visiting Malaysia during that time, to come over to the shelter home to observe how the Royal Malaysian Police conduct the investigation, interviewed the victims. And I think that was the first time for our both countries to, both counterparts, to came together doing coordination with, on rescuing and also interviewing the said victims, the process of interviewing traffic victims in Malaysia. And on that case itself, we have conducted the operation and managed to rescue about 27 Filipinos national as per information given, and arrested 1 Filipino national as a perpetrators. What I'm trying to stress here is that the cooperation between PNP and RMP comes to the success of the operation together. Next. Just a brief view on the victim rescued and the interim protection order being given to the victims. As you can see on the slide, there were about 2,102 victims have been rescued since 2018 till to date, being Philippines nationality on about 131, Vietnamese 872, Indonesian 646, and Thailand about 453 victims that we have rescued along the current years from 2018. Moving forward, on the effect of COVID-19, as I believe that all of you are aware that since March 18 this year, the Malaysian government has announced a nationwide movement control order due to the increasing coronavirus cases in the country. And under the MCO, except essential services, all others activity or premises were closed. And the whole peninsula, currently the whole peninsula, except few states, which is Pahang, Kelantan, and Perlis, 3 states, were placed under the condition movement control order again till December 6 to 2020. And all the quarantine and travel restriction by the state of Sabah and Sarawak, nation states of Sabah and Sarawak both announced temporary travel restriction. And as to date, there is about 8th of November, there's about 40,209 cases in Malaysia, being 286 deaths. And it's still under treatment of about 11,689 patients still under treatment. For this current update on pandemic, we are sure that we are trying our best to try to combat the human trafficking by launching ops venting, that we call it ops venting, throughout the border of the country to stop any cross-bordering from other countries to Malaysia. That's about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, ATP Azry, for sharing with us, this time from the perspective of Malaysia. I saw that both countries have actually emphasized the same case where you were able to rescue 27 victims. So that's really a concrete example of a good cooperation work with between 2 countries. So thank you very much. So may I call now to our second set of speakers. We have Lieutenant Police Colonel Kim Kinso from Myanmar, and then followed by Police Colonel Khemmarin Hassiri. So may I now give the floor to Police Lieutenant Colonel Kim Kinso. I will likewise share the slides for you.
Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Sorry, darling. I cannot hear Kim Kinso's voice. Hello?
Can you hear Elsa?
Please wait.
下家啦？下家ပြီလား？
ဆရာမခဏလေးပါဆရာမခဏလေးပါ
ဟုတ်ဆက်ပြန်ထွက်လိုက်ရအောင်
ဆ
လား
ရာမတို့ခင်ဆိုခဏလေးပါကျွန်တော်ဒီမှာဟိုဖြစ်နေလို့ပါ
下家ပြီလား Hello
Okay ရပြီဆရာမကျွန်တော်ရပါပြီ
ရပြီလားဆရာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ရပြီဆရာမပြောပါခင်ဗျဟုတ်
အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါလို့ဥစွာပထမနှုတ်ခွန်းဆက်
မင်္ဂ
တာ
လာပါမင်္ဂလာပါ you all
ဒီနေ့တင်ပြချင်တာလေးတွေကိုနှစ်နိုင်ငံ
What I'm going to present here is about the cooperation between
ကိုက
the
လေး
two
တွေ
countries
အောင်မြင်မှုတွေစိန်ခေါ်
so
မှု
we
တွေ
are going to talk about the success and challenges
မှုကင်းဖော်ထုတ်မှုတွေနောက်
and investigations
ပူးပေါင်းဆောင်
and
ရွက်
then
မှု
how we cooperated under the constraint of COVID impact
အဲ့ဒါလေးတွေကိုတင်ပြမှာပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်
so we are I'm going to talk about all these things
ကျမတို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံက2004ခုနှစ်
in
မှာ
Myanmar in 2004 next slide
Anti-Trafficking
please
ဆိုပြီးတော့မှမြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့
we signed anti-trafficking agreement
2005ခုနှစ်မှာလူကုန်ကူးမှုတား
in
ဆီး
2005 we enacted an ATIP law
အဲ့2005ခုနှစ်မှာထုတ်ပြီးတော့မှ2009ခုနှစ်
in 2009 April
မြန်မာနိုင်ငံနဲ့ထိုင်းနိုင်ငံ
we signed an agreement with Thai DSI
ဖြစ်ပါတယ်2013
signed
ခုနှစ်
MOU with Thai DSI
2013ခုနှစ်မှာတော့လူကုန်ကူးမှုတားဆီးနေ
in
နေ
2013
ရပ်တည်ခဲ့ပါ
so
တယ်
we established ATTF anti-trafficking unit
အဲ့တော့ DSI နဲ့ကျမတို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံနဲ့အရှင်
with DSI Myanmar
6လတစ်ကြိမ်စီအရှင်နိုင်ငံဖြစ်နေအစည်း
has
အဝေး
been holding 6 monthly meetings on the basis of rotational hosting.
နောက်ဆုံး20ကြိမ်ရောက်အစည်းအဝေးကို video
The
conferencing
last 21st meeting was done by video conferencing.
တိုင်းနိုင်ငံ Riot Thai Police အဖွဲ့နဲ့လည်းပူးပေါင်းပြီးတော့
And then we also held meetings with RTP.
9ကြိမ်ရှိပါပြီအဲ့ဒီအစည်းအဝေး
We
ကို
had
တော့
held altogether 9 meetings.
19ခုနှစ်ဒီဇင်ဘာလမှာ
The last meeting was in 2019 December in Phuket, Thailand. Next slide, please.
အဲ့တော့နှစ်နိုင်ငံပူးပေါင်းပြီးလှုပ်ဆောင်ကြတယ်ဆိုတော့ကျမတို့ကနယ်စပ်ဆက်ဆံရေး
in the joint investigation, so we have Bilateral offices.
Bilateral office 3ခုတည်ထောင်နိုင်ခဲ့ပါတယ်
There are 3 Bilateral offices we have established.
2012မှာတာချီလိတ်မယ်ဆိုင်
2012 we established Tachile Mesai Bilateral office.
နှစ်ရုံးတည်ထွင်နိုင်တည်ဆောက်နိုင်ပြီးတော့မြောက်ရီကိုတော့
we established another office in Koh Tao, Renong.
ပေါ်ပြပါစလိုက်ထဲကပုံနေရဆိုလို့ရှိရင် Bilateral 3ရုံး
So these are the pictures of our 3 Bilateral offices.
အဲ့တော့ဒီလိုအစည်းအဝေးတွေပြုလုပ်
So because of due to our joint meetings
ရရှိခဲ့ပါတယ်အဲ့အောင်မြင်မှုတွေကိုတင်ပြခဲ့မယ်ဆိုလို့တင်ပြမယ်
we have many we have gained many achievements owing to these meetings. Next please. Next Darling please. Next. Okay.
No ရပြီအဲ့တော့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံဘက်ကနေထိုင်းနိုင်ငံဘက်ကိုလူကုန်ကူးမှုဖြစ်သွားတဲ့တရားခံကိုလည်းထိုင်းနိုင်ငံက
Actually Myanmar could repatriate Thai perpetrators to Myanmar to Thailand.
Now လွှဲပြောင်းပေးဖို့အထူးလိုအပ်နေတဲ့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံ
And
သား
then we also Myanmar traffic citizens who are in special repatriation needs are being repatriated also.
လွှဲပြောင်းပေးနိုင်ခဲ့ပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါတွေကျွန်တော်လက်ခံရရှိပါတယ်အဲ့တော့တခါလေကြောက်ရှိရင်နှစ်နိုင်ငံသတင်းဖလှယ်တယ်
Sometimes we also exchange information between two countries.
နိုင်ငံတွေကိုရောက်နေတဲ့အကူအညီပေးဖို့လိုအပ်တဲ့ထိုင်းနိုင်ငံသားကိုလည်း
And then Thai citizens who would be in need of help were such cared and repatriated to Thailand.
အဲ့တော့တနိုင်ငံနဲ့တနိုင်ငံနယ်စပ်ဒေသတွေမှာလုံဆောင်နေတဲ့ဝန်ထမ်းတွေဟာပို့ပြီးတော့မှလုပ်ငန်းသဘော
Because our staff both the police staff at the border they are very close and they understand each other well.
ဒီမှုနဲ့ယုံကြည်မှုတွေနဲ့တိစောက်လာပြီးတော့မှကျမတို့ရဲ့လုပ်ငန်းတွေက
we have built trust and confidence between each other. When I speak, I cannot hear her anymore. That's the problem. Very big.
And
you are aware that there are differences in two countries' legal systems. However, because of the 6 monthly bilateral meetings, so we can coordinate and cooperate with each other in the cases. Actually, we do the informal and formal cooperation because of the bilateral meetings. So these are what we have achieved in through our bilateral meetings. I'd like to go on to present challenges. Next slide, please.
Next, please. Yes.
Okay, challenges. There are not many challenges, however. When we work together in activities, we have difficulties relating to translation and verification of information. In addition, we have police officers who have done their studies in the Thai Royal Police Academy. Therefore, actually, we think Thai RTP should have similar officers who can understand Myanmar language in their force. That will be better. Next point is, so at the border areas, because of the changes and job transfers of the people who are working at the border areas, sometimes we lost contact with the main key persons, so we couldn't carry out our activities effectively anymore. And the last one is, sometimes they are Myanmar citizen perpetrators in Thailand. To arrest them, when we request for the arrest, Thai counterparts ask warrants from us. Warrants. But in our country, it's very difficult to get warrants, arrest warrants. Therefore, first we open first investigation reports against the culprits or offenders. We give the number or serial number of the report, and then phones we can provide. Address. So actually, we like to request our Thai counterparts to make the arrest with these particulars, if we can provide these exact particulars without the warrant. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Okay. Next slide.
Next slide, please. Yeah, because it's a repetition. There's a repetition. Oh no, madam.
Hold there.
Okay. So there is a cooperation between the two countries during the pandemic period. This is one successful cooperation activity. The unit leader got recognition because of this case from the police chief of Myanmar. The victim was recruited online. He fell in love with a boy online. Her boyfriend said, okay, I will stay near you only. Okay. But actually, he actually lived in Ranong. First, he pretended to love the girl. And then they got married, formally married at the village administrator office. They said, okay, now we are husband and wife, so we need money. And then he went back to Renong. And then he sent for the girl. And when the girl reached there, she had to work as a fish factory. And then in March 2020, the parents of the girl made a missing person report to the police. But the provincial police, actually, they didn't act effectively. That's why this case reached our ATTF unit, ATIBD unit. And then we used this photo, and then we distributed this photo among our team members. And then through the cooperation between the Renong police and the Kotong police through investigative mechanism, so we successfully identified the girl and we successfully rescued this girl. This is the fruit of the very effective cooperation between the two countries.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. So this on the left is the repatriation from Myanmar to Thai.
Thai to Myanmar. Yeah.
Thai to Myanmar. Myanmar to Thai. Yeah.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
So this
investigation we conducted at the Tachile Mesa Bikade office. So there's a cooperation activities.
Yeah. Next slide.
Next slide, please.
So
it happened in 2012 January, 2019 January.
2019 ဟုတ်ကဲ့highway land မှာကားမှောက်သွားတာမှာမြန်မာဘက်ကနေပြီးတော့မောင်းပို့တဲ့လူနဲ့
overturned on highway street, highway road.
မြန်မာဘက်ကနေဖော်ပြပါ slide မှာရှိတဲ့ပုံနှစ်ပုံပါဆိုလို့ရှိရင်မြန်မာကားသမားနဲ့လှေသမားပဲဖြစ်ပါလှေသမားကထိုင်းနိုင်ငံကားသမားပုံကိုပေးတာ
the picture.
Yes.
Yeah, the Myanmar driver, you can see the Myanmar driver and Myanmar boatman who transported the victims.
Yeah. And the Thaiနိုင်ငံကားသမားတာယာဘိန်းပေါက်ပြီးတော့မှတပည့်ဝင်တိုက်တဲ့အခါမှာ၄ယောက်သေသွားပါတယ်
So actually there was an accident which killed 4 passengers.
အဲ့မှာဟိုနိုင်ငံအဆင့်အဖွဲ့အစည်းတွေနဲ့ပူးပေါင်းပြီးတော့မှဒီကော့တောင်း
we cooperated at the national level.
National level ကော့တောင်းနဲ့ဘီကာတစ်ရုံးနဲ့ရောပူးပေါင်းဆောင်ရွက်နိုင်ခဲ့တဲ့
And then we also cooperated at the Bigative level also, and then we achieved success in this case.
မြန်မာဘက်ကလူတွေတော့မြန်မာဘက်မှာပဲအရေးယူခဲ့တယ်မြန်မာကားသမားဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အခုဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပဲတည်သွားပြီ
So Myanmar offenders were taking action against Myanmar, and then the Myanmar driver he died in the prison.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
ဒီကုန်းချုပ်အနေနဲ့တင်ပြရမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်
In conclusion,
ကျွန်တော်တို့အိမ်နီးချင်းနိုင်ငံထိုင်းနိုင်ငံနဲ့ဆက်သွယ်ပြီး
because our neighbor Thailand, we will continue to cooperate.
ကိုလည်းပုံမတားဆီးနိုင်မယ်ပုံမတားဆီးပူးပေါင်းဆောင်ရွက်မယ်
If we can improve our cooperation, we will better we will better present the tip cases.
ခင်ခင်မင်းမင်းရင်းရင်းနှီးနှီးဆောင်ရွက်လိုပါတယ်
And then we like to deal very cordially and with goodwill with our neighbor Thailand. So we invite Thai counterparts to deal with us cordially also. We also express thanks to ASEAN ACT. So we will. I wish to continue our cooperation in future. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel. That wonderful presentation. I think that was very good example of cross-border cooperation between Myanmar and Thailand. So now let us hear from Thailand's perspective as well. May I call on Colonel Hassiri to do his presentation for Thailand now. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with the ASEAN ACT webinar this afternoon. My presentation will be short and will be a supplement to the presentation presented by Police Lieutenant Colonel Kin Kin So from Myanmar Police Force. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we have the bilateral meeting with the Myanmar Police Force since 2014. The first meeting was held in Phuket, Thailand on the 5th of August 2014. But that is 5 years later after the MPF, Myanmar Police Force, and the DSI, Department of Special Investigation of Thailand, has signed the MOU. So it is 5 years later. And the last meeting before the COVID-19, we had the 9th meeting here in Phuket, Thailand on December the 21st, 2019. But unfortunately, the 10th meeting in Myanmar in late March 2020 was canceled due to the pandemic. And the meeting of the two countries, of the two police forces, were conducted in 6-month rotational basis. We have yet to sign the MOU with the MPF because our draft is pending for an approval from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Thailand. So I think after the pandemic, after everything is getting better, we will discuss with the MPF on our MOU between the two police forces. So moving on, the second topic, the judicial system on trafficking persons in Thailand. We have a special court that is the Court of Appeal, and it is the Division of Human Trafficking. So the special court will deal with the tips exclusively. And we also have the Department of Trafficking in Persons Liquidation Office of the Attorney General. So it is the separate division to cope with trafficking persons. So that is within our judicial pillars in Thailand. Next slide, please. So the TIP law, now we are using the TIP Act BE 2551 or 2008. So currently is we're using this law on trafficking person investigation and prosecution. So we have a very strong partnership with the Department of Special Investigation, which belong to the Ministry of Justice. And we also work very closely with Ministry of Social Development and Human Security, as well as the Ministry of Labor. Next slide, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. Hello. Thank you. So for the challenge, I think it is similar to the what Lieutenant Colonel Kin Kin So has presented. Even though the country is very close as a neighboring country, we have a strong level of the language difficulties and victim identification because the way of writing and the way of speaking is totally different. And Myanmar also has plenty of dialects. So it is very difficult for Thailand to allocate or to provide or search for the translator because people from different part of the country from Myanmar, they speak different dialects. So sometimes we go beyond the limit of our investigative power to to hold the suspect of maximum of 48 hours. So sometimes we have to go to the prison to interview the suspects, and also happen to the victim as well. So next is the victim's repatriation. The victim repatriation is sometimes difficult for us and Myanmar as well, because the request from Myanmar is most likely to have the person repatriated through the certain channel. But sometimes due to the limit of the staff of the police officers, sometimes we have to wait for a longer period. So that caused a problem to hand over the suspect to our colleagues. And because the MOU of RTP and APF is pending, so that would cause the difficulty for the unit, the small unit working along the border to manage the arrest and then the repatriation of the person. This one is, in addition, there's not including in the slides. We have Myanmar officer, 4 of them studying at the police academy, and who will graduate in February 2021. This is the second batch of 4 police officers. The benefit of having the Myanmar police force officer studying at the police cadet academy in Thailand, they will learn the legal system in Thailand, and then they will get the partnership with their classmates once they graduate, and then they can communicate with each other. That is another channel of communication which has shown the effectiveness of cooperation. There is one case, it is the criminal case happened in Thailand 3 years ago, whereby the servants came from Myanmar, has stolen the money and the goals from the employers, and she absconded into Myanmar, and later she, due to the informal communication between the classmates of the Myanmar police cadets and their colleagues in Thailand. So we managed to arrest the suspect in Myanmar and then prosecuted her in Myanmar court. And finally, we can seize the gold bar and then returning to the owner in Thailand. That is one of the sample of which is not the tip case, but it is the cooperation that has been built by the academic or technical assistance. So up to now, we have about 1.5 Myanmar migrants working in Thailand. This number has been reduced from 3 million because during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, most of Myanmar migrants, they want to live back home, and the number of Myanmar migrants now has been reduced to just half of them before the pandemic took place. So the Royal Thai Police is planning to offer a new batch of 4 police officers to Myanmar Police Force. So I think next year or the year after next year, we will have the 3rd batch of the Myanmar Police Force at the police academy. So because of the long borderline stretching between Thailand and Myanmar, almost 2,000 kilometers. So the securing of the border is very important. But during the pandemic, we have experienced that there are less illegal entry into Thailand. So after the pandemic, we will strengthen the border cooperation. So I think this is the end of my presentation, and I thank you very much for Police Lieutenant Kin Kin So that has presented very informative information. And last but not least, I would like to say thank you to ASEAN ACT to giving me the opportunity to be at the webinar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel Hassiri. The pleasure is ours, and we are all very honored to have all of you as our speakers today, who has presented excellently about your experiences on cross-border investigation. And it was really interesting to listen to the cases that you have presented, and also given the challenge that there are different procedures and legal frameworks from each of these 4 countries, and yet you are able to coordinate because of the continuous bilateral meetings, continuous and open communication between these 2 law enforcement agencies. So we are really glad and happy to know about those experiences and perspectives from your countries. So let us now open the floor for questions and answers. We received questions earlier before the webinar, and I would like to ask these questions to all of you. Anyone can jump in anytime, or if you think the speaker would be saying, or you would be saying the same thing, just say so. So for our question, ASEAN member states are very concerned about confidentiality and secrecy of documents, informations, and other data received from the other parties, including the source of that data or information. So can you please share with us how we were able to ensure this during the bilateral transnational exchange of activities of sharing of information that you have conducted during the several meetings you have done between your 2 countries? So is it ladies first or gentlemen first? Please jump in, any one of you, please.
Okay, for the Philippine National Police and the RMP, informations or documents shared contains a notation like non-disclosure agreement, which means that the info that has to be shared will only be used for investigation purposes, and any use of such during the trial needs to pass through the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. And also, with this, it will ensure complete flow of information to critical decision makers, notwithstanding general prohibitions set forth under their respective national laws. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sheila, for that information on MLATs and how you do things to keep the confidentiality of information being leaked. Okay, anyone else who would like to add to that?
Yes, just need to stress out that the information that we shared between PNP and RNP may need to be protected, and we practice a good conduct in sharing the operational value of the information that we have received by sharing with only the people that is relevant to be used on the information given. And apart from that, apart from having a formal request by the on the information, we also use focal points between the 2 agencies on receiving and giving information. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Assistant Commissioner Azry, for confirming also what was done between the 2 countries. So Colonel So and Colonel Hassiri, would you like to share as well from your sharing of perspectives from your country?
Okay,ပြောလို့ရပါပြီ So in our okay, Java is oh.
သတင်းချက်လက်တွေထောက်ထားတွေလုံခြုံဖို့အတွက်ကကြတော့ကျမတို့တာဝန်ရှိတဲ့တာဝန်ပေးထားတဲ့လူကလွဲပြီးတော့မှကျမတို့ဘယ်သူ့ကိုမှနှုတ်နဲ့ပေါက်ကြားခွင့်မရှိအောင်
Actually the information confidentiality we have to ensure that only the responsible staff has to handle the information only
မှုကိစ္စတစ်ခုမပြီးမချင်းကို
and unless and until a case is completed so that the responsible person has to ensure the confidentiality of this information relevant to the case.
Okay, thank you very much, Lieutenant. Okay, thank you very much, Lieutenant Saw. Colonel Hassiri.
Yes, thank you. So for the information sharing, we have two types of information sharing: the formal information sharing and informal information sharing. Because we experience most of the requests from MPF is in a very urgent manner. So we utilizing the informal communication, but that has to be done through the designated officer on the focal points. I myself still acting as the RTP MPF coordinator. So most of the urgent requests from Myanmar Police Force Chief of Police will go through my channel. So I pass on to the Deputy Chief of Police and also the Chief of RTP National Chief of Police. We also have experienced the difficulties to process the request through MLAT because that is very lengthy procedure, and sometimes it come out of very late. But anyway, we have worked closely with the public prosecutor in Thailand to emphasize the need of the cooperation through MLAT. So that is what RTP has experienced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all our speakers and for emphasizing that the sharing must be only for a certain purpose, that there are procedures to follow and there are only designated persons or office who would do that. So thank you very much for that information. I just want to let you know to all our speakers that our participants or attendees has reached the 400 attendees mark and more than that, 400 plus. So, and most of them are students who are studying to become police officers. So they are very interested to listen from you, our experts on this matter. So on to our next question. One of the objectives of this bilateral transnational investigative cooperation activities between the ASEAN member states is to build trust and strengthen the police-to-police cooperation. So how has this transnational investigative cooperation activities between Philippines and Malaysia, between Myanmar and Thailand, strengthen such regional cooperation on investigation, prosecution, and victim protection? How has the pandemic affected this cross-border bilateral work? I know for one that it has shifted your meetings from actual face-to-face to virtual. At least that was one thing that has affected it. But if you can share some more and how this has contributed to building the trust and improving police-to-police cooperation, considering the number of years that you have been doing this. So maybe we can reverse the sequence and call on Police Colonel Khemmarin first.
Hello, hello. Do you hear me? Hello. Hello,
we can hear you, Colonel Kem. We can hear you.
Thank you, thank you. For Thailand, we are a bit surprised that the COVID-19 pandemic does not affect any regional cooperation between Thailand and Myanmar. And for the victim cares, we are checking with the Department of Special Welfare, the procedures and then the process of victim care is running smoothly. Maybe because we have less customers, we have less suspects, and the illegal entry to Thailand cannot be done because any part of Myanmar, any part of Thailand has the COVID-19 control and very tough measurements. So even the Thai people, we still to use the mask. We still have to comply with the Ministry of Public Health guidelines on COVID-19. So for Thailand, COVID-19 does not affect anything, especially the regional cooperation. Thank you very much.
Apologies, I was on mute. Thank you very much, Colonel Kem. And can we now call on Lieutenant Colonel Saw?
Yes, COVID-19
ကာလမှာထိုင်းနိုင်ငံကိုဝင်မရှိတော့ဘူး
Okay, Siama,ပြောပြပါSiama.
ခုနထိုင်းနိုင်ငံတင်ပြခဲ့တယ်လို့ပေါ့နော်ကိုဗစ်ကာလမှာ
As Thai counterpart said
ထိုင်းနိုင်ငံကိုအဝင်မရှိတော့ပေမဲ့ထိုင်းနိုင်ငံကနေပြန်လာတဲ့လူအများပြားကျမတို့စီကိုပြန်ရောက်လာတာပေါ့နော်
During the pandemic period, even though the illegal entries are lessened into Thailand, but we have more people coming back from Thailand into Myanmar.
အဲ့တော့ဒီပြန်လာတဲ့လူတွေကိုလည်းကျမရေးဝန်ကြီးဌာနရဲ့လမ်းညွှန်ချက်နဲ့အညီကျမတို့ကစီစစ်တယ်စီစစ်ပြီးတော့မှ
We scrutinize these people in accord with the instructions from the Ministry of Health.
သူတို့ကို quarantine center တွေမှာလူကုန်မှုခံရခြင်းရှိမရှိကိုကျမတို့ကသူတို့ကျမရေးစစ်တယ် negative ဖြစ်ပြီဆိုရင်သူတို့ကိုကျမတို့ကလူကုန်မှုခံရခြင်းရှိမရှိဘယ်လိုပြန်လာတာလဲဆိုတာလေးတွေတော့ကျမတို့ interview လေးတွေလုပ်ပါတယ်
So we place them at the quarantine center, facility quarantine centers, and then if the test negative, we interview them and we try to examine, we try to find out whether they have been trafficked there or not. We interview them.
ဒီစီးဝဲနဲ့တော့မဆိုင်ဘူးပေါ့နော်ထိုင်းနိုင်ငံပြန်တဲ့လူတွေမှာလူကုန်ခံခြင်းမရှိပေမဲ့လည်းတရုတ်နိုင်ငံကပြန်လာတဲ့လူတွေမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့လူကုန်ခံတဲ့လူတွေရှိလို့အမှုတွေဖွင့်ခဲ့နိုင်တယ်
Yeah, even though this is not very relevant to this meeting, but I like to share you with the information that even though there have been no victims coming back from Thailand, but we have some victims coming back from China. Some people coming from China have been trafficked there in China.
အဲ့တော့ကိုဗစ်နဲ့အဲ့လိုမျိုးပေါ့ကျမရေးဝန်ကြီးနဲ့ညွှန်ကြားချက်နဲ့ညီလှုပ်ဆောင်တယ်ဆိုတာလည်းပြောပြရစီတော့ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်
So actually, what I like to, in a nutshell, so we are going in accord with the instructions from the Ministry of Health. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you again, Lieutenant Colonel Saw, for your sharing and about the situation even during pandemic. All right, maybe call on Assistant Commissioner Azry.
Yeah, how this transnational investigative cooperation, I believe that by having this cooperation, we create smart partnership between the two countries. And having smart partnership give you high quality of information between two countries. And it will also give an effective partnership by having trust and understanding, just like creating a friendship between two parties. And also it builds strong partnership by getting to know your sharing partner personally and professionally between the two agencies and also between the two personnel. And how does the pandemic affected this cross-border bilateral work? We acknowledge that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a severe and multi-dimensional impact on the region and express our optimism that ASEAN community building effort will continue apace with ASEAN's strong mettle and self-reliance as well as with the support of our external partners, and responsive to further strengthen cooperation and advance our partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assistant Commissioner Azry. I like that attitude of positivity. So may I call on Police Colonel Sheila, please?
Okay, for the police-to-police cooperation, we call this as an informal channel, wherein with this partnership, we can actually do timely information sharing, which brings me back to the rescue operation we did with the RMP. It was boom, 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 and then results came in so fast. Like, I cannot overemphasize the impact of that partnership, really. Then with regard to the effect of the pandemic, of course, since we have already fostered a good relationship with the RMP, the face-to-face meetings has been put in the shelf as of this moment, but the partnership and then the collaboration is still ongoing. Like virtual meetings are still being conducted, and although the reports or the referrals have decreased because of the pandemic and the limited movements of Filipinos traveling to Malaysia, we are still on the lookout that in the event that we will be needing help from our RMP brothers, they are ever ready to extend help to WCPC.
Okay. Thank you very much, Colonel Sheila, and all of our speakers. And it is really inspiring to listen to you, your dedication to your work despite the challenges and the pandemic, including that of your offices and of your respective countries. So I would like to give the floor to my co-moderator, Khem, to read some more questions from our participants. So Khem, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Darlene, and to our esteemed panelists this afternoon. I have the honor of asking you the questions that our participants have written in the Q&A box. And the first one is for Colonel Khem of Thailand. And we have two questions here. And I promised Michelle that I'm going to ask these questions because Michelle was really keen on asking this question to our Thai officer. She emailed me this question earlier. And these are the questions, Colonel Khem. What mechanisms does the Ministry of the Interior have in place to implement real change to Royal Thai Police practices in transnational investigation and prosecution of human trafficking cases that will be implemented or rolled out across the provinces and regional areas? Colonel Khem?
Yes. First of all, I would like to make it clear that the Royal Thai Police is working under the supervision of the Prime Minister, and we have been outside the Ministry of Home Affairs for quite a long time, about 20 years. So the guidelines for our jurisdiction about of the TIPS investigation, we have the specialized unit to deal with at national level, and actually the local police station have their own jurisdiction to conduct their criminal investigation, including TIPS. So the police station is very independent on conducting the investigations, whereby if there is a cross-border investigation like the case from Myanmar, so that kind of investigation will be submitted to the Office of Attorney General. So that is like the case outside the country. So that will be an approval from the AG, the Attorney General, to assign the public prosecutor to be the joint investigators with the police investigation. So I think this is the answer.
Thank you so much, Colonel Kem. And I think you also answered the second question of Michelle. Nonetheless, we can try to ask the other panelists, I think, of how will your organization handle transnational and organized crime post-COVID-19? I think this question deserves a webinar of its own. But if I can go to ACP Azry, please. ACP Azry, what are the Royal Malaysia Police strategies post-COVID-19?
Thank you, Ken, for the questions. What we are currently doing now and what we are preparing for this post-COVID pandemic 19, how are we trying to stop human trafficking activities in the country is by trying to strengthen up our borders throughout the countries. And by having said that, we have established a national task force between agencies, enforcement agencies in the countries to tighten up the securities of the borders to prevent any unexpected event coming into Malaysia, any unexpected trafficking activities which can be occurred into the country. And I think that's the main concern of us nowadays, that is to try to strengthen up and to protect our border. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Commissioner of Police Azry. And this question I will throw to Colonel So, our Myanmar speaker, and I hope Dr. Kiao, our interpreter, is ready. Colonel So, this is one of the questions that I think is repeated in a number of times. Is victim identification more difficult with border lockdowns still being enforced? Has trafficking in persons been deterred in light of the pandemic?
COVID ကာလမှာ voter identification လုပ်ဖို့ကတော့နည်းနည်းလေးဟုတ်ကဲ့ရ
ပါပြီဆရာမ
အနေငယ် COVID ကာလမှာတော့အဲ့ victim ကို identify လုပ်ဖို့အနေငယ်ခက်ခဲတယ်သူတို့တွေကတော့ပြန်လာလို့ရှိရင် quarantine ဝင်တယ်
Victim identification is a bit more difficult during the COVID period.
Negative ဖြစ်မှလည်းကျမတို့ကစစ်လို့ရတာပေါ့နော်မေးလို့ရတယ်
First of all, we can only interview the people who test negative.
ဒီကသူတို့တွေလူကုန်မှုခံရတယ်သူဟုတ်မဟုတ်ကိုဟိုဘက်ကနေစစ်စစ်ပြီးတခါတည်းအဲ့စာရွက်ကလေးတွေအထောက်အထားစာရွက်ကလေးတွေပါမယ်ဆိုရင်တော့မြန်သွားနိုင်တာပေါ့နော်
It would be better if the Thai counterparts first screen them for the tip cases, and then if they can give the note of clearance to them, it will be very supportive to us. So that means we cannot double work here.
အဲ့ကြောင့်တစ်ချက်တည်းတင်ပြချင်တာတော့အကယ်၍မြန်ဟိုဘက်ကနေဘူးခံတဲ့လူလွှဲလာမယ်ဒါကတော့ကိုဗစ်ကာလအတွင်းပေါ့ကိုဗစ်ကာလမဟုတ်တဲ့ချိန်ပဲဖြစ်ဟုတ်တဲ့ချိန်ပဲဖြစ်လွှဲလာခဲ့မယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့ရဲ့စာရွက်စာတမ်းတွေအားလုံးကိုဘာသာပြန်ပြီးသားလေးတစ်စုံလုံးပါလာမယ်ဆိုပို့ပြီးတော့အဆင်ပြေသွားနိုင်တာ
Yeah, if there are some traffic victims who come back from Thailand, actually if the RTP can provide them with some necessary documents, so it will be very helpful to us in victim identification. Currently, it is a bit more difficult. That's all I like to answer to that question. Thank you very much. Please wait for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Colonel So, and to our interpreter, Dr. Kiao. Despite the difficulties of the interpretation, I think we're able to get it right this time. And I have the next question and another question from one of our participants. I think a general one, and I really would like to ask this one to Colonel Sheila Portento of the Philippine National Police. Colonel Sheila, according to Michelle, one of our participants here, one of our attendees, what is the new normal for the law enforcement?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. The new normal for us law enforcement is that everybody has shifted online, like what we are doing now. So with the borders closed or Filipinos are being repatriated back home, this is the right time that we raise the level of awareness to the community. And we conduct this through our Interagency Council Against Trafficking, wherein government agencies are part of the council, and we work closely together in order to capacitate the people in the community, so that by raising their awareness as to how to detect that a trafficking might be happening in your area, where to report it, how to identify victims, would really be a very good kickstart in our fight against trafficking. And then in addition to that, we have also a stricter, observing strict protocols when it comes to engaging or conducting interviews to the victims. Say, for example, there are Filipinos being repatriated. During the pre-pandemic scenario, we can actually go there and conduct interviews right away. But now, logistical and financial requirements are already added to our burden, like we have to be wearing PPEs, and likewise, we need to prepare our operatives so that during the conduct of investigation, we just limit the time of exposure or the time of contact that the victim and our law enforcement will be engaging into. And I guess that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Sheila. I think great answer, and we recognize the efforts of our law enforcement officers in the different countries in ASEAN and what you're doing despite the pandemic. And this question is from Indonesia and specific for ACP Azry. The question goes, thank you for the great presentation from the panelists. I am Fitri from National Commission on Violence Against Women, Indonesia. I would like to ask about the condition in Malaysia. Malaysia is a favorite destination country for Indonesian migrants. Is this pandemic COVID-19 Malaysia authority arrest undocumented migrant workers? How to ensure protection for undocumented migrant workers, especially in the case of issues of arbitrary arrest, and how to tackle case of trafficking in person, because migrant workers are vulnerable to trafficking during the pandemic, how to eliminate impunity for perpetrator in trafficking. I think Assistant Commissioner Azry can answer this question.
Thank you once again, Ken. Okay, like the questions have been mentioned earlier, that no doubt that Malaysia has been a destination country, not only from Indonesian, but other ASEAN countries as well. And we took action in not focusing on only Indonesian, but as well from other countries as well. But when you're talking about the procedure or the process of trafficking in person here, once we identified or received an information with regards to being exploitation has been conducted by a suspect or subject, we took action in rescuing the said victims, irregardless of the nationalities of the victims. And the procedure is that we rescued them, and then we will place them under shelter homes in the country, throughout the country. And during the pandemic time, what we try to ensure that the victims are safe from any COVID disease. And what we did is, after rescuing, we'll make sure that doing a swab test to ensure that the said victims or the suspect that has been arrested or the victims that has been rescued are free from the COVID-19 disease. That is the procedure now, and I agree with Colonel Sheila earlier that the norm of the enforcement agencies is totally different nowadays compared to previously, whereas new SOP has been written to ensure that the protection from both parties. That is, the suspect, the victims, and also the enforcement agencies are well taken care by the government. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent answer. And if I were your teacher, I think I'm going to give you 95% or A+. And this next question, I think my last question for our panelists, Darlene, for this afternoon. And the question will go to Colonel So and Colonel Khem. A question, I think, from Myanmar. The question is from Kin Miu Tan from Myanmar, and Kin says, how do you cooperate on victim identification between Thailand and Myanmar, especially on the issue of victim identification of victim of trafficking and being identified as an illegal migrant? How do we reconcile the different policies and legislation on victim identification in trafficking in persons and for undocumented migrants? I think I will invite first Colonel Khem from Thailand to answer the question, and then Colonel So can follow later on.
Thank you for these questions. For victim identification, the Royal Thai Police is very serious about the issue. By the policy of the National Chief of Police, the undocumented illegal migrants, we're not treated as suspects. So we treated them as victims. So once we run through the victim identification process, they will be sent to the shelter. And we will cooperate with the Department of Special Welfare. And what is the big concern for Thailand is that we will speed up the process in order to safely return the victims back to their country. And during stay in the shelter, we provide them with food and accommodation, and now also with the works as well, because I think if during their stay in the shelter, they also need money, because Thai government allow the victims who stay in the shelter to that they can work. So this is the measures that Thailand is coping with the undocumented and illegal migrants. So we guarantee that they will not be prosecuted. They will be treated as the victims, and we do our best in terms of human rights and the rights of the victims. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Colonel Khem. And now we go to Myanmar at the same question and perhaps other new insights from Lieutenant Colonel So.
Bobby. Okay. Actually, our identification process is very similar to Thailand's one. Yeah. First we identify the suspected victims, and then if the person proves to be a victim, so we place them under a shelter. So first Myanmar Police Force has been providing 1 million just to a victim whether he opens a case against the offender or not.
တခါလေကြာလို့ရှိရင်တော့ victim အရေးအတွက်ကမတူနိုင်ဘူးပေါ့နော်လူမှုဝန်ထမ်း victim အရေးအတွက်နဲ့ရဲတပ်ဖွဲ့ victim အရေးအတွက်ကမတူနိုင်ဘူးဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ရဲတပ်ဖွဲ့ကိုကြာလာတိုင်တဲ့ case က victim ပဲရမယ်လူမှုဝန်ထမ်းမှာကြာတော့လာတိုင်တဲ့အမှုရောမတိုင်မဲနဲ့လူကုန်ခံရတယ်အဲ့ဒါလေးကိုကြွယ်တရားနေဆိုတော့ပြောပြပါဆရာ
But the numbers in the reports of the police force and numbers in the reports of the social welfare department can differ a lot because police capture only reported cases, whereas DSW capture all the cases whether they are reported to police or not. That's why there can be a great difference between a police report and the DSW report. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Colonel So, and to our interpreter, Dr. Kao again. We have a lot of beautiful questions in the Q&A box, and I'm very sad to say to our participants that I will not be able to ask our panelists all of your questions, but I promise to get back to you, and I'm going to submit these questions to them even right after the webinar. To our participants, Rika, Sister Pia Chatbunmul from Thailand, and other participants who have asked questions in the Q&A box. We're going to submit your questions to our panelists, and hopefully we'll be able to connect with you after this webinar. And thank you so much to our panelists for indulging us with your expertise this afternoon, with your experience, with a lot of experience in working with fellow law enforcement agencies around the region. And with the ASEAN Convention on Trafficking in Persons, I think we would still be able to cultivate better transnational investigative cooperation in trafficking in persons cases amongst all the law enforcement agencies of ASEAN. And with that, I thank all of you, and thanks a lot to our participants, and I turn over the floor once again to my co-moderator, Darlene.
Thank you very much, Kem, and thank you for your thought-provoking questions. We can only wish that we can entertain more questions. Thank you very much too to our distinguished speakers for graciously answering the questions from our attendees. Before we close the session and moving forward, as a takeaway, what to all our distinguished speakers, what recommendation or at least one takeaway can you give our attendees to at least as a way forward, how do we actually improve the transnational investigative cooperation between and among the ASEAN member states? So well, can we have the sequence from Colonel Portento to Assistant Commissioner Azry, and then Police Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Khemmarin Hassiri, and then Police Lieutenant Colonel So. Sorry, Police Colonel Hassiri, and then Police Lieutenant Colonel So. Thank you so much.
So we can highlight the success stories of the Philippine National Police and the Royal Malaysia Police, as well as the Myanmar and Thailand. So we can also replicate this with other ASEAN member countries. This is a very effective tool to combat trafficking in persons, as this is a transnational crime. It speaks of no borders. Everybody has to be involved. Thank you.
And once again, I have to agree with Sheila here. And I believe that by having these bilateral meetings among the countries, Thailand, Myanmar, Philippines, and Malaysia, it will increase the networking between us, and it's much more convenient and more understanding between the parties to interact with each other and to share information with each other. Is much more easier in this way. Thank you.
For me, if we can upgrade the cooperation from the bilateral cooperation to multilateral cooperation, that would be nice. And I think pretty soon we will partner with the Philippines, Sheila, and we will also partner with Malaysia, our close neighbor, Azry. And for Lieutenant Colonel Tintin, so we will keep our good cooperation. we will have the exchange of visit of our high-ranking officer in regular basis. Just wait for the pandemic is over. Thank you very much.
I think you are on mute, Lieutenant Colonel So.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Siapa kena di ba?
Okay.
Kena di ba siapa? Ya ba bi siapa? Ya ba bi. How to how to improve our cooperation. We understand each other. We understand each other's country. Yeah, if we can cooperate at the human level, regardless of color, races, and country, and then we can cooperate empathically towards with each other, so we will achieve greater success in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a great conversation and great advice from all of you, sharing your time and invaluable thoughts with all of us today. And your experiences are really very much appreciated. So this conversation has definitely highlighted the significant law enforcement work that each of you had been doing in your respective countries and across ASEAN borders in countering trafficking in persons. And I like the idea that it shouldn't be just between your two countries, but we expand to other ASEAN member states and even more than two countries talking together. So even 2 or 3 or 4 talking together, that is a wonderful recommendations from all of you. So thank you again. To formally close this event, may I then call on our Deputy Team Leader, Aaron Rosada, to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Darlene. This is on behalf of our team leader, Erin Anderson, who's currently presenting in another webinar. So I'm very pleased to provide some brief remarks to close today's webinar on lessons learned in transnational investigation and prosecution of human trafficking cases. Hosted by our ASEAN ACT team today, you've all done a wonderful job and should be very proud. I wish to offer our sincere thanks to Councillor Gillian Ray for her welcome remarks that helped set the tone for today's webinar. The ASEAN ACT program is supported by the Australian Government's Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And as Councillor Ray mentioned, Australia has shown its strong support and commitment to ASEAN, particularly with helping in its recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I also wish to say a very special thank you to our presenters. We greatly appreciate you sharing your time, experience, and expertise with us today, especially during the Q&A session with some of those challenging questions. Police Colonel Maria Sheila Portento, thank you for your presentation on the gains, challenges, and lessons learned, also ways forward from the Philippines. From your presentation, we were able to see the Philippines' dedication towards counter-trafficking in persons. To Assistant Commissioner Azry Akmar bin Dato Haji Ayob, thank you for your presentation as well. We were able to see the many transnational cases that Malaysia has undertaken with other ASEAN member states, and we're certainly looking forward to supporting you and your officials in the future. Police Colonel Khemmarin Hassiri, thank you for sharing your updates on Thailand's cooperation with Myanmar and also all the internal working arrangements that Thailand has and also its challenges. We're very thankful that you had time today. And Police Lieutenant Colonel Kinkin So, thank you for the insights into Myanmar's successes, challenges, and also what Myanmar is doing during COVID-19 to protect and care for victims of trafficking. ASEAN Act's work on transnational investigative cooperation between ASEAN member states is an activity that was first started under our predecessor program, which some people may be familiar with, called APTIP. We will continue to build on our past shared successes and support ASEAN member states in strengthening their collaboration and cooperation, especially with their obligations under the Convention on Trafficking in Persons, so that we can achieve just punishment of traffickers and the protection of victims, especially under the current health and economic crisis resulting from COVID-19. Thank you to all our attendees. We're very fortunate to have participants from across the ASEAN member states and other parts of the world. We hope you found today's webinar informative and useful. And lastly, from myself and the team, we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar coming up in the coming months. Once again, thank you, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm sorry, Darlene, I have to cut you off, but can we all have another picture while Aaron is here? And it's a nice frame at the moment. So kindly smile to your camera once more. There you go. And 1, 2, and there you go. And last one, ladies and gentlemen. Can we do the waving picture like this? There you go. Perfect. Very good. And over to you, Darlene. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Kim. I think that's one of the highlights today, the group photo. And so thank you very much for that. And thank you, Aaron, Rosanna, for the heartfelt remarks. And to our speakers, thank you so much. You have been all great. Please accept ASEAN Act's deepest gratitude. And thank you to everyone for your participation, for actively asking questions. And please don't forget to send us your feedback. The link is in the chat box. And before the year ends, we will have one more webinar on December 16. It's gonna be another interesting webinar because it is about how the criminal justice system can work to prevent re-victimization or re-traumatization of victims. So we will have our speakers who are forensic expert and a prosecutor, and also a victim sensitive expert on victim protection. So I'll see you again on December 16. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye and have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Keep safe.
Keep safe.
Bye.